Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It's me, Addy, again, and I hope you guys are doing amazing as always. So about a week or so ago now on stream, I finally wrapped up with Chrono Trigger. And this is, without a doubt, one of the most legendary JRPGs of all time, and as usual, I'm here to bring you guys my review of the experience. And starting today, I wanted to try something a little bit different going forward with these review videos, and that's dividing these videos into a non-spoiler section and of course a spoiler section. So the idea is at the beginning of this video during this portion here, I'm going to be sharing my non-spoiler thoughts with limited gameplay footage in this pre-recorded segment, followed by later on in the video showing you my raw live thoughts in a spoiler review, immediately following my completion of the game on stream. And of course, I'll overlay all of that with a bunch of gameplay footage. I feel like this should be a good way of reaching out to the folks who've yet to play the game and who have played the game alike. So let's see how this goes. And as always, if you do want to catch my full VODs of the games we stream over on Twitch, like Chrono Trigger here, then you can catch them on my second channel, that's Irritable Archives, linked in the description below. And if you want to watch me playing these games live, then of course you can stop by over on twitch.tv/irritableidian, also linked down in the description. Anyways, let's begin. So Chrono Trigger is a game that I played as part of my ongoing Final Fantasy marathon on stream. Even though it's not technically a Final Fantasy title, as a fan of Square Enix and classic JRPG titles in general, I felt like I owed it to myself to finally experience this one properly. And after about 40 hours, I can honestly say that it more than lived up to the hype. So if you've somehow never heard of it, Chrono Trigger is an SNES era JRPG that was released back in 1995. It was made by a dream team. No, seriously, these guys were literally dubbed the Dream Team. And these gentlemen were none other than Hironobu Sakaguchi, who created the Final Fantasy series, Yuji Horii, who created the Dragon Quest series, and of course, the late legendary Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, and the handler of the character designs in this game. These gentlemen had one goal in mind when creating Chrono Trigger, and it was to make something that had never been done before. They clearly wanted this to be the best of the best, and I wouldn't blame anyone at the time for thinking that they succeeded. I absolutely recommend this game, without hesitation. For a game that came out in 1995, the sprite work is still stunning. There are genuinely beautiful animations in this one that hold up even today. The combat system is incredibly dynamic, with seamless transitions and awesome synergy attacks between each party member that really make you want to experiment with various team comps. And these synergy attacks are called techs. Dual techs if 2 characters are performing them together, and triple techs if 3 characters are performing them together. What's really cool is that I'd heard the term dual techs being thrown around a bunch over the years, but had no idea that Chrono Trigger was basically the game that coined the term, so this was kind of a cool experience for me getting to witness that. Also, these characters have really distinct playstyles and a ton of personality. In a world full of charm, these characters are really quirky and memorable in that 90s JRPG sort of way. And of course, there's friggin' time travel thrown into the mix. Chrono Trigger is a wonderfully told story with a grand sense of adventure that's all about time travel, which is not generally a plot you see being executed as effectively as it is within this game. And while it is central to the plot, it is deeply embedded into the way the game plays, how quests unfold, and how you explore the world and travel through its different eras. It's all just really cleverly done. So if you love JRPGs, especially the classic stuff like the Final Fantasy series, or if you're a fan of Akira Toriyama's visual style like I am, I mean the Dragon Ball franchise is one of my favorite pieces of media ever, then you definitely owe it to yourself to give this one a shot. Ultimately, given that this game is just one of those rare titles where everything just clicks, you know, it's creative, polished, ambitious, and still feels really fresh decades later, this one, to me, is an absolute 10 out of 10. Currently, as of recording this video, I am streaming the game that has been taking the world by storm. And that is of course Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which feels like such a fitting contemporary follow-up to my Chrono Trigger playthrough. And I can't wait to be back next time gushing over that one because it has been every bit as incredible as everyone has been making it out to be. But that's a story for another day. For now, what I'm going to say is that the rest of everything there was my non-spoiler review of Chrono Trigger. So stop watching the video now if you haven't played it, go play it. You can get the remastered version on Steam. That's where I played it. Best $20 you'll ever spend. Maybe even less because it's usually on sale for dirt cheap. And then come back later because up next is my raw reaction from stream right after we finished the game. And that is of course the spoiler section. So without further ado, let's get into the spoiler review. And as always, keep on keeping on. Oh my god, let go! I think that's it. Please let that be it. Please don't let that be phase 2 out of 10. Please. Please don't let Kill in the chat here have manifested the fact that that was phase 2 out of 10. I swear to God. Oh my God. That was a challenging ass boss fight, but a fucking amazing one, man. I love it. It really does test you and everything you've learned up to that point in the game, and really asks you to respect its mechanics and test your mettle to get through it. Amazing. We beat Chrono Trigger. Let's go. Rolling the credits, man. After around 40 hours, I want to say, we have reached the end. Let's freaking review! God damn. Crazy game, man. Huzzah indeed. Huzzah indeed. We made it. Holy shit, I didn't think we would tonight, man. The end game portion was so much longer than I thought. Even like having gone halfway through a lot of the side content during the final scenario that we went through in the last stream a couple of weeks ago. Even then, man, it took me a little minute here to like finish up with the rest of it and also do the final dungeon, which, dude, we didn't even like, we only did one run through of the Black Omen, right? From what we kind of discussed in the chat, you can go through the Black Omen multiple times, right? The final, the palace, from which you can then take on Lavos. So it really makes me wonder just how many different approaches we could have taken in general, right? We could have potentially gone back to take on the Black Omen multiple times in the other epochs. Maybe we could have avoided it entirely in general and just gone directly to Lavos. Right, the open-endedness in this game is really freaking amazing. This shit blew my mind, man, with what they were able to accomplish in 1995 here and how much they really pushed the envelope and the industry with this game, right? I had heard amazing tales of this game going into it and how it's considered revolutionary and one of the most important games of all time because of what they managed to basically accomplish, and how the Dream Team, right, those being some of my favorite minds in the industry, like Hironobu Sakaguchi, creator of Final Fantasy, right, the front man of one of my favorite, if not favorite series ever, Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, favorite anime ever, Yuji Horii, who created Dragon Quest, one of the most important, influential JRPGs ever created, if not the first. We even had like Nobuo Uematsu doing the music. Absolutely stacked, legendary team that was rightfully so dubbed the Dream Team that worked on this game. And my understanding is that their vision was to make something that, like I said, truly pushed boundaries. And you could tell every square inch of this game that they absolutely did that and excelled with flying colors. There's so many things in this game that are staples of JRPGs that you would kind of come to expect, especially from this era of the genre. Everything you would expect from JRPGs are pretty much in here and then some. It's kind of like to the point that it makes you feel like this game really doesn't show its age, because it's just a celebration of everything that makes JRPGs what they are and what makes them so good and so special, but with a lot of like spices thrown in to make this a really unique original experience that, pun intended, stands the test of time. You've got like a solid cast of characters who come together to take on this ultimate threat, right? Which is how I ultimately define most of these kind of games, particularly from the Final Fantasy series and by Square Enix, right? Is that they're kind of defined by that camaraderie of the characters who then go on an epic adventure to then take on this big world-threatening event of some kind. And you get that beat for beat in Chrono Trigger, with some really colorful, compelling characters. Now, granted, I didn't really find every single one of these characters to be ones that will kind of like resonate with me and like stay with me for a long time or anything, but by, you know, any stretch of the imagination, but two of them absolutely stood out. I think Frog and Magus were the best characters in this game. I think they were the most compelling. I loved Frog's story of going from this scrawny squire who is not confident in his abilities to coming into his own and being prideful and making his master proud as well in the afterlife, and then also having Magus, right? Having this really cool kind of trope of how he's our enemy, but then we realize that we're united by a common foe. I feel like the cinematics in this game, because we played the DS/Steam version, which had all these cinematics in them that were directed by Akira Toriyama's studio, Bird Studio, I believe it was called. They were beautiful, man. They were sublime. I loved Dragon Ball growing up, and the art style in these cinematics really harkened back to Dragon Ball GT for me, and I really did love the art style of GT. I feel like both Dragon Ball Z and GT look amazing, but GT just was a little bit more refined, and you could really tell that Toriyama had kind of hit his stride with the artwork in that, and it was really cool to see a lot of the moments from the original Chrono Trigger kind of being breathed new life into with some of the really epic cinematics. Yeah, I was expecting to see another cinematic of that caliber that we had seen throughout the playthrough at the end there. But yeah, man, you've got a this grand sense of adventure with a turn-based system in it, right? That kind of like dictates the whole gameplay flow, the combat flow. But it's a turn-based system, like we were kind of talking about earlier. This game, you know, push boundaries and the envelope and everything. The turn-based system is a great example. It takes like the active time battle system that, you know, Final Fantasy IV kind of came up up with. And it pushed it into like a situation where you're kind of like running into enemies without the actual battlefield changing to like a different set piece or anything like that. It all kind of takes place dynamically within the level itself that you're going through, and I thought that was really cool. It added to the immersion. I think this had to have been one of, if not the most immersive turn-based systems from back in 1995, right after Final Fantasy VI. There's just so much going on in this game throughout your adventure of this world, throughout many different epochs, right? Because it's a epic, time travel adventure that's been created so beautifully, so immaculately, in my opinion. We're going through these different epochs that kind of parallel the history of our own planet and human civilization and everything like that, starting from prehistory all the way to what we might see in the future, right? Which is a bleak post-apocalyptic hellscape after, of course, the main threat of this game, Lavos, kind of destroys everything. It's really cool how they kind of like, their goal was to like go through all those different periods. But like I was saying, I think that the really neat thing about this game, while you adventure through it and you play as Chrono and you go through all these like really colorful levels and biomes and stuff with a lot of solid enemy variety, is how the perspective is also changing all the time. It's not always a 3/4 perspective that you kind of anticipate from this era of JRPGs, but it's also sometimes going into like a flat 2D perspective. Sometimes it feels like it's straight up isometric when you're like, at the end of time with the guru and everything like that. Another trope that it's got that kind of like, falls underneath that is the epoch, which is your airship, which is, I think, the coolest one that I've personally seen in any JRPG that I've played, like more than any Final Fantasy game, to be honest. Like, you got your own little Dragon Ball coded time travel machine, right? It's like something Future Trunks would fly around in Dragon Ball, it feels like. And it's really cool how you use that and how that's employed to kind of like travel across different eras, and how also like throughout the game, you're kind of like traveling back and forth to change things both in the future and the past through both the main story and the side content and all of that, which the end of this game really offers an insane wealth of side content, which I really appreciated. I thought it was really neat how all the characters in this game had their own resolutions, their own like closure to each of their own personal arcs. On top of that, it was nice that the DS and Steam version here by extension that I played had that really cool Lost Sanctum add-on, which kind of added way more stuff there with the I forgot what they're called, the reptites, and how they kind of have you going and doing all these like quests and everything for them. I thought that was really neat. It did leave a little bit to be desired though. I think it may have made the game feel a little bit padded out and bloated at times, with how needlessly long it went on for, in my opinion, and how the back and forth thing kind of got a little bit laborious. But all in all, there's a solid wealth of content here in Chrono Trigger, and it's amazing how this game really doesn't ultimately show its age if you are into these kind of games. And you're into these JRPGs, these old school ones. I think you would really enjoy this game today as much as you would have back when it came out. Even though, yes, admittedly, you might be playing the Steam version like I did here, which, has all these like contemporary editions and everything like that, like retranslations, the cinematics, and all of that from back in 2008 when it was, ported to the DS. We played with the original visuals, right? Which admittedly had been a tiny bit touched up and upscaled, but not by that much, right? Largely everything we were seeing while going through this game looked a lot like the original SNES aesthetic. So it was pretty much a game that I feel, as a result of its bright, vibrant color palette and excellent sprite work, kind of stood the test of time in terms of the visual component as well. So just a lot of things in this game to appreciate and admire in terms of how it just made for an incredibly fun experience that was both, number one, revolutionary, and now I kind of see how a lot of games over time are inspired by this. Great recent example was Sea of Stars, which we played 2 years ago. The developers obviously have been on record saying that Chrono Trigger very clearly inspired them, and even if you didn't hear about that from them, you could very clearly see where they took the strokes from for Chrono Trigger. It's literally written all over the game. Very cool to see stuff like that, man. I'm so glad we got around to playing this because, as established, we've been doing a Final Fantasy marathon, right? Never played the first 6 games before, finally did that. It was an amazing experience. I owed it to myself as a big fan of that franchise, and with 7 being my favorite game and everything like that, I wanted to experience the classics, and I'm glad that we took this little detour here to play through Chrono Trigger, because this came out right after Final Fantasy VI, and it was, of course, by Square Enix themselves, and it was something very different, but something that was in the same spirit, the same vein as the Final Fantasy series, but something that, of course, once again, wanted to like really push boundaries, push the envelope, be something that had never been seen before. And I thought it was really important for us to experience this, and we did, and I'm so glad that we did. This game blew my freaking mind with how much it accomplished for something that came out back in 95. I can't wait to someday potentially revisit this. I will definitely maybe YouTube some additional things, but not too much in the event that I kind of come back and want to go through most of it myself. Like the other endings, the other choices you can make, because there are so many scenarios in this game where you are presented with, you know, options that will ultimately dictate how the rest of the game plays out. Like literally, you have the ability to either save Chrono or let him stay dead at a certain point in the game, right? At the end of the game, which is something I think was really cool, there's that whole angle of when Chrono's gone, and you normally never see that in these kind of games. It turns into more of an ensemble game, right? Chrono's the main character up until that point, but then it becomes a very like ensemble type game where everyone is kind of like equally important in the party. No one's really taking the back seat. No one's really at the forefront. You can choose who you want to like run around as the leader of the party. And that's another thing that was amazing about this game, seeing the characters running together in the overworld, which was, I'm sure, something that really immersed people back in the day, because before this, you would typically only really see one character running around and the others would, you know, just merge in and out of that character on the screen, right? To show that they're part of the party, but you don't actually see them. This game like really unpacked things and made things as immersive as possible, but it was cool how the how the characters all had equal importance towards the end, and it wasn't just ultimately about Chrono's story. Chrono doesn't, for the latter half of this game, stand in the spotlight, right? He does for obviously the first half of the game, despite being a non-voice protagonist, which to me, that doesn't really hit the right notes because I always prefer voiced protagonists. I played a lot of other games that don't have voiced protagonists, other RPGs of the like. Great example that immediately comes to mind really is Golden Sun, you know, with how Isaac isn't voiced in that, and then the second one you don't have Felix voiced, even though he was the first one, and then I think Isaac ends up getting voiced, but that's a story for another day. I don't find myself getting attached to the characters as much, but regardless of that, it's still kind of fun to just witness this grand scale of an adventure that these characters embark on, despite the fact that, you know, they may or may not be resonant with you. And this game, god damn, does it feel like a massive, amazing adventure. You're literally going through time. You're going from 65 million BC all the way to frickin' 2300 AD, way past where we ourselves would be alive, right? Where shit's gone south. Absolutely, to the most extreme degree. But yeah, it's really cool, man, how subversive this game can get with the party members towards the end, and how many quests there are, and the choices like I was talking about. Some really, really cool stuff here. I think that you will be very, very happy with Chrono Trigger if you're just looking for a nice old school JRPG to get immersed in and have a lot of fun with. The combat was solid. I think the dual text and the triple text and discovering what they were between the characters was such a sick experience, and this game made wanting to play all the characters over time and level them up really, really fun, because I can identify that in some games it can get, you know, kind of grindy, and, you know, it can get kind of stale and you don't want to like do that for too long. But man, did they avoid that with this game, because you were always looking forward to the next flashy, amazing looking thing the characters could do. And the animations were sublime. Like I said, once again, the sprite work was amazing. The little tiny animations were great. Honestly, in my opinion, the best part about these dual texts was looking forward to what the characters would do, right? What the characters would visually perform, what all that stuff would look like. I think that was the main appeal of it for me. Besides, of course, like the values and everything like that, and the damage you'd be outputting against all the freaky deakies in the game, who, by the way, looked amazing. Every single step of the way in this game, I was just thinking of parallels between this and Dragon Ball, man. I have personally never played a game outside, obviously, the actual Dragon Ball fighting game franchise that was one of Toriyama's works, and like a completely original separate world from that, created as a video game, right, with his like art direction and characters and everything like that. So I was always like making parallels and connections between, oh, some of these mobs look like characters I've seen before in, you know, Dragon Ball movies and Dragon Ball episodes. Like these little tiny gremlin looking dudes look like, you know, Green Garlic Juniors, or this guy looks like Janemba, but Janemba hooked up with like a Minotaur or something like that. It was just really, really funny going through this game and noticing like, damn, okay, yeah, this is a really cool consistency I'm noticing here in his visual style, because I've never really experienced anything outside Dragon Ball by Toriyama, right? I've never seen Dr. Slump or any of that other stuff that he did. Yeah, this has been a hell of a ride. I love playing these kind of games, and I'm so glad I got to go through Chrono Trigger. It was a wonderful experience. Borderline as blind as a bat for Expedition 33, but I'm so excited. I think it's like super awesome how we played Chrono Cross here which is a turn-based game from another era, and a fantastic one at that. And now we are going into a contemporary modern approach to a turn-based system, which is also getting glowing reviews and is being hailed as one of the best games ever made within this vein of games. I think that's kind of freaking badass. And once again, I think it's really amazing how we started this playthrough just as a way of, you know, doing a fun detour after FF6 as sort of a pseudo part of our FF marathon, but we didn't even realize that around the time that we started this game, it was pretty much the 30th anniversary of Chrono Trigger. So in a way, if we wanted to, we could say that this has also been a fun 30-year celebration of the game. So hell yeah, man. One day I will absolutely play Chrono Cross as well. We're not done. I know it wasn't received as well. It wasn't reviewed as positively back when it came out, but I have fond memories of the beginning of that game growing up. I loved the music, man. And that's another thing about Chrono Trigger here, is the music was fucking amazing. Like, I get why people talk about how they wanted to learn how to play the music of this game growing up, how it had a special place in their heart, the people who dropped in and, you know, show their love for the soundtrack. I get it, man. It was great. It was so good. Especially some of the quieter areas of the game, like when you go through the forest in this game, and it just sounds so transcendental, right? The music, it's so amazing, man. I love JRPG soundtracks in general. I don't think I've ever been disappointed in the past by compositions by the likes of Uematsu, and also the gentleman who, the other composer, right? I keep forgetting his name, I apologize, but the two of them worked on this one. Yeah, I think this game was solid. Solid 10 out of 10, dude. Absolutely. And yes, while I do have pain points with the whole Lost Sanctum portion, that isn't a part of Chrono Trigger's core identity, right? Because Chrono Trigger originally didn't have that stuff. It was a very robust, focused experience. I mean, you kind of like exclude that and kind of don't experience that as like extra padding and potential bloat to the game. What you have here is a game where everything is handcrafted with a very special, specific purpose. No time nor space is wasted in this game that's been allocated to it, right? Everything was given the utmost of care and attention. And yeah, they definitely made for one of the greatest games ever made. Absolutely. Like, I think this is so goddamn good. I would absolutely recommend this to anyone out there looking for a solid classic JRPG, or in the same vein as the Final Fantasy titles. Some really cool shit here to anticipate. And I think the coolest thing is how there were parallels between this and FF7, my favorite game, that I didn't even anticipate. Like, the frickin' villain is another fucking parasite. That's so cool to me, right? The fact that you got a Genova-esque villain in this game, you know, festering in the planet and is trying to like amass energy and then screw it up and then move on to the next planet in the cosmos, right? I think that was really cool. You're like traveling through time to stop it. You're trying to kill Lavos, and you have many different approaches for how you want to go about that, which leads to many endings. So the fact this game did time travel as like a plot, it explored many different endings, dynamic battles, right? You basically fight in the area that you're in against some really cool, quirky enemies. Like, shit like that is just what makes it such a standout game that I'm not surprised a lot of people have as one of, if not their favorite games of all time. It just feels like such an incredible adventure. And when I think of JRPGs going forward, man, like typically in the past, I've thought of shit like fucking like Final Fantasy VII, like a favorite game. Like, why wouldn't I, right? I've thought of games like Final Fantasy IX. Another game I absolutely adore and treasure. One of the most important games to me. But truth be told, going forward, when I actually hear the word JRPG, when I hear the letters JRPG, I'm actually going to think of Chrono Trigger. I think this is the pinnacle and zenith of that era of JRPGs, because it is a love letter to that genre that just perfectly packages in all these things you know and love about it. If someone is curious what a JRPG is, I will direct them to this game. And I think that's my highest commendation of Chrono Trigger, is that it absolutely succeeds as being, you know, this pinnacle of the genre. So amazing game, man. Highly recommend it. Thank you guys so much for all the support. This has been a beautiful series. Can't wait to go from this to Expedition 33. Yeah, there's my spoiler review after finishing this game live on twitch.tv/irritableiNdian. Thank you guys.